Please join us in welcoming the CEO of the Merchant Advisory Group, John Dretchny.
Bright lights.
Bright lights.
I know.
Wow, you can tell what time of day it is in Vegas, can't you?
It's a happy hour.
Well, this, I think, gives us a free pass to say whatever we want, guys. So remember that none of this will all be forgiven now. Nobody will write any of this down. And
You're so wrong. We got the media in the front row.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being there. At least that way maybe we'll get some value out of publicizing this. But anyways, I got a great group with me today. So for those of you who know me or don't know me, my name's John Dretchny. I run the Merchant Advisory Group. The Merchant Advisory Group has about 150 merchants that are our members. And our whole job at the Merchant Advisory Group is to help get the voice of the merchant out into the marketplace and to help propagate change to help the merchants deal with payments. And I've got a great group with me, and I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself.
Great. I'm Kara Kazazian. I'm with Walmart. Been with Walmart for about 8 years now. Have responsibility for in-store acceptance for credit and debit cards, so do a lot of work with the networks and our acquirers to make payments happen at Walmart every day.
Hi, I'm Ron Collins. I am with Dignity Health. I've been with Dignity Health now for about 3 years. I manage the merchant card relationship, or the merchant card operations all throughout our 40 hospitals.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Gurman. I'm from Microsoft's Commerce and Ecosystems Group. Well, we're responsible for all of Microsoft's first-party business selling in 200 markets globally for all of Microsoft's products and services like Office 365, Xbox, Microsoft Store, and Azure, and Bing advertising.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for introducing yourselves, and thank you for being here, too. I appreciate you making the time today to come. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the merchant space around checkout and how technology and the change of technology is influencing and impacting customers as they go through your checkout processes. And I love the diversity that we have up here. You guys, I think, have to cover just about every type of checkout process that's available. So let's go ahead and get started. And so when you guys are looking at new payment solutions, how do you evaluate where to invest?
Sure, I can start. So I think cost is an obvious one, but I think these days resources are really infinite, right? Or really finite, I should say, sorry. Even more than cost, we're really looking at the time that something would take when we're looking at new technology or payments innovations, and also the resources it would take. So, because we can't do everything, and saying yes to one thing may mean saying no to something else, or rearranging things that we'd previously prioritized. If we think about it in the Walmart ecosystem, some of the things that we're thinking about when we're evaluating new payments technology or innovations, ultimately, what's the benefit for the customer, right? What problem are we trying to solve? We also look at what's the benefit for Walmart. Is it something that's driving sales, reducing cost? And then also when we're looking at partners, what makes that solution unique? How do you differentiate? Because we don't need to do something that everybody else is doing. And then also, how does it support our company's strategy and our payment strategy? So those are some of the lenses that we really look at when we're looking at new payment solutions and technology.
Great, thanks, Kara. I know, Dan, you guys deal a lot with reoccurring billing, and that's a little bit different than some of these other transactions that we see. What are some of the frictions that exist in the reoccurring billing space?
Thanks, John. About half of our payment transactions that we process on our platform are recurring billing transactions, and that from a variety of different products. So from our consumer product like Xbox or Office 365, and then we have a commercial version of Office 365 as well, and then Azure and advertising. These products each have different aspects to them that we need to consider. So for example, on the consumer side, the payments are typically fairly level, so at the same time month after month after month. On the commercial side, we have a lot of usage-based subscriptions that are quite variable. And so the dollar amount for those transactions can be tremendously large, from $10,000 for a customer one month to $120,000 for a customer the next month. So this creates a lot of challenges for us. The largest source of friction that we see in this segment of our business is really around declines that we get during the renewal process. So we support both monthly and quarterly and annual subscription renewals. And during that time, of course, what happens is many times we see a decline in the transaction. So there's a lot of challenges that we have in terms of making sure that we keep our card on file hygiene very, very clean. So we're constantly making sure that the card instruments that we have on file reflecting the payment instruments that the customer has available to them at the bank. So if they have a compromised card or so on. So we really spend a lot of time trying to optimize our account updater. So I would highly recommend, if you're not using Card Updater already and you support recurring subscriptions, or if you're just a card on file merchant, that you really think about investing in a card account updater. So we use a card account updater. We look in advance of every subscription payment that we're doing when we see a card that's going to expire. We always make sure to do that in the month the card expires. I've gotten requests from merchants, for example, 90 days before my card expires. I'm not going to get that card until the month that it actually expires. So a big critical part about that is making sure that you have the timing of when you submit the account updater inquiry right. The other thing that we do is when we get a decline, we obviously submit those for the account updater as well. So we really rely heavily on the account updater to keep the accounts fresh and reflecting the latest account that the customer has. We also are looking at enabling things like tokenization. So with tokenization, you can endure, even when a customer's card is compromised, or if it is reissued due to an expiration date, your PAN that you're using to submit for your authorizations is consistent even when the card transaction is declined, or excuse me, when the card is updated. We're also looking at real-time account updaters, so there's a number of processors and networks that are looking at offering that today. I won't go into the details about each one because you could really talk about recurring payments for a very long time. So we always do that. On the optimization of the retry schedule, that's another thing that we invest a tremendous amount of effort in as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're a global merchant, so we pay attention to what the payday schedules look like in different markets. So you see quite a bit of variability, even within European markets, different payday schedules there. So you really want to make sure that you're asking for the payment to be authorized at the right time. And then even in the United States, we know that there's certain types of payment instruments that get the balance updated at a certain time. So for example, we will look at the best date and at the bin level to determine when we should submit retries and make sure that our timing is optimized around that. We're also pretty aggressive in terms of the retries that we do. So for soft declines that we're allowed to retry, we'll try up to 10 times. And what the right number is for you as a merchant is really unique to you as the merchant. So you need to think about things like the cost of your authorizations, the COGS of your product, if you're provisioning product or letting customer use a product and you haven't collected revenue for it. So all those things are unique to every merchant, but we look at all those things and deciding exactly how to go about making sure that our recurring declines are minimized.
Thanks, Dan. Ron, healthcare has its own unique type of transaction sets. Why don't you help us understand some of the things that you've seen in innovation that's helped with those challenges?
Okay. Well, healthcare is notorious, or known as a notoriously slow evolving space, whether it's payments, other than the customer care or patient care.
Thank God for that, right?
Right, much better. But three of the things that we've been working on, I'll start with our clinics. We've implemented something called Care of the Future and Clinic of the Future. What this does is it allows our patients, it eliminates the wait times and it shortens the lines, but more importantly, it adds a scope of privacy. So if our patient it eliminates what we do is we provide the patients with either a tablet or they can register at a kiosk. They can put all their personal information in and then make their payments as well. More importantly, they can set up a card on file, so anytime they go to the clinic, they can pay using the card on file, or they can pre-register. From home they can check in and make their payment as well. It's a seamless process, but more importantly, it does add the value of privacy. So the discussions between the person at the front desk and the patient is eliminated. And then next is our pharmacies. We have retail pharmacies, but we also have an area of what we call a specialized pharmacy. And because there are drugs, or at least the unique drugs, are really expensive, this allows our patients to, we have what we call our liaisons throughout various clinics. And so our patients will go to the liaisons, have these special drugs ordered, but then because of the cost is is just really enormous. It allows them to set up payment plans, and so they can pay monthly until they paid off the drug. It's basically, and then finally, this is, I think, pretty cool. As we have what we call a mobile video visit. We just implemented this. This gives the ability for someone that they may have a small issue, not enough to go to an ER, but you may not have the time to also visit urgent care. You can simply pull up any of your mobile devices and schedule time with that doctor for a video visit. Once the visit's over, they can recommend a prescription, they can recommend a follow-up care, but more importantly, they can make their $59 payment right there and then.
That sounds good. You guys all probably have seen there's a lot out there in innovation in the marketplace today. What do you guys, and you guys have implemented a lot of innovation as well. What have you seen as a result of implementing innovation that you've learned something from?
I can start there. So I might pick on two use cases within our environment, and one is online grocery, which we've rolled out to a number of the Walmart stores. You can place your grocery order online, schedule a time to pick it up. Not surprising probably to anyone, busy moms love that. They love to be able to shop for their groceries anytime, anywhere, without having to go traverse through an entire supercenter. They can pull up, check in, and their groceries are delivered to their car. Sounds simple, right? And the payments piece was probably the simplest part of that. But when we think about innovating, again, innovations in our environment is not just about payments. In that case, we're linking inventory from our e-commerce site to our stores. We've got item files. We now have to figure out labor that's going to walk around the stores and actually pick up those grocery orders. So from a payments perspective, there's a fraud aspect too. Do we know that customer from an in-store transaction? Have they shopped with us on Walmart.com before? We actually stood it up as a separate website. So making sure that we have enough information to know that it's a good customer is something that seems easy, but there's a lot of complexity to standing up these new things. But also very important as we look at becoming more and more of an omni-channel retailer and making sure that we're serving the customer wherever they want to shop. Another innovation that I might touch on is that not all of the innovation comes from the US, and I think we've heard that sprinkled throughout the last couple of days. So Walmart acquired a company out of India called Flipkart, and part of Flipkart is an asset called PhonePe, which actually does mobile payments in India based on the UPI system. The gentleman from Google spoke about that a little bit earlier today. So I think being able to look across not just innovation in the US, but innovation across the world and really see how that's driving commerce is really exciting. And PhonePe is one of those really fast-growing, India is a really fast-growing consumer market, as we know, but PhonePe in India has over 50 million active monthly users and is currently accepted across 3 million merchants in India and on track to be accepted at 6 million merchants by the end of June. That's an incredible growth rate. So really exciting from an innovation perspective there. Sometimes it's build and sometimes it's buy within our environment.
Oh, I agree. One of the things that I'm in Treasury, so we've partnered with our internal team called the Office of Digital. And their main focus is to go out and, along with us, for example, at MAG, what they'll do is go out and look at all healthcare systems, but not only just the healthcare systems, but all the big box retailers and so forth to see what innovative products are out there. And then they bring it back to us, and then we all sit in a big, huge think tank and say, how can we implement these innovative processes and products? And how will that impact our customer? Or our patients? How does it impact the billing? How does it impact HIPAA? Are there any cyber risks and so forth? So it's a continuously evolving conversation that we continue to have, but more importantly, it's much needed because of the landscape has changed in payments.
So it seems like, when I look at some of the innovation that's been in the marketplace lately, right? Kara, I love what Sam's does with Scan and Go, right? Where you use your phone, you can scan the items, you complete the checkout, and you just show them when you check out. I love my Starbucks app. I mean, how many people here love now you can just order your coffee, you show up, and it's there and it's ready, and you can go with that. You look at like McDonald's, you look at Chick-fil-A. It seems like merchants are starting to figure out how you innovate in a way that is not just around the payment, but you're solving a customer solution. How important is it for you guys that whatever is brought to you from an innovation standpoint isn't just about, hey, let's tap, but it's about solving customer issues?
I think it's critical, and you touched on Sam Scan and Go. So he asked who's using Starbucks. I might ask who's used Sam Scan and Go, but it's a really great experience where within the Sam's app, you can check yourself out as you go through the club. Kind of a different shopping experience, right? In a warehouse club, everything is barcoded, and there's a single entry and exit point if you shop in a warehouse club, so it works in that environment. But it's really solving not for a payment problem. It's not a payment friction that we're solving for. In that case, the customers are now skipping the entire checkout line. They're not interacting. They're not having to go to a cash register. They're not needing to interact with an associate or go through self-checkout. They are their own register on their device, and they're able to check themselves out and walk out the door. And that's been game-changing for our members within Sam's Club. I think I was looking at some of the numbers around Starbucks the other day, too. Mobile order ahead is still pretty new, and it's now over 13% of their US sales, and over 40% of Starbucks sales are done using one of their loyalty cards. Everybody wants to collect the stars. So I think, again, it's not solving there for a payments problem. The mobile order ahead is great because you don't have to give your whole long customized order to the barista. You're not having to stand in a busy Starbucks line. You arrive, you pick up your drink, and you're on your way. So I think more and more merchants are finding those pain points and helping innovate solutions around that, which may include payments, but are not necessarily limited to payments.
When you guys go and implement something, right, you guys are all businesses, right? You have to have ROIs, you have to, so what do you look at when you're measuring on whether it's successful or not from an implementation standpoint?
Is that to me?
Sure, why not?
Okay, I'll take it. So the first thing we've done is we've hired a lot of really, really smart data scientists and business analysts at Microsoft. So that's where we really start from. A lot of the processors we work with, we have a very complex environment. We work with multiple processors and operate in a champion challenger framework. So we can't really rely on any services that a third party is going to deliver to us because they don't see a comprehensive view of everything that happens in our platform. So it's really important that we have all the visibility within our own analytics team so that we can understand when there's impact. So we look at things in a lot of different ways. One of the areas that we've invested a lot of time and money in is what's called the trusted mid. So a lot of people may have heard of this, other people may not have heard of this, but essentially what we do is we have a way to filter some of our volume so that that segment of volume is known to the financial institutions that we work with as being very low risk. So it's a set of very highly qualified customers. And so for that set of customers, what we can do is we can spend a tremendous amount of effort analyzing the authorization performance, chargeback performance, and so on that we see across these different segments of our business. We also use that same capability to actually assess and evaluate how effective the issuer's risk systems are. Many merchants don't realize that while they have their own risk system, issuers have a risk system as well. And many times these two systems kind of don't work very well together, and so that's what's led to a lot of false positives in terms of risk declines. And so we spend a tremendous amount of money really understanding the authorization performance that we see with the trusted mid and the authorization lift, and validating that we're not doing anything that's going to degrade our primary businesses in that. And when it comes to new payment methods, we don't just deploy every new payment method that the providers tell us that we need to deploy. We really spend a lot of time understanding our customers, understanding what payment methods that are the most relevant for them, given the products and services that we're buying. And then when we deploy those payment methods, we always measure to see if we're getting incremental revenue, and we track the cannibalization of that payment method with other payment methods that we might already support. And we take deliberate efforts to try to drive behavior that's going to actually lead to a positive impact in our profit efficiency of the platform. On the routing side, many of you are aware that cards are issued with multiple brands sometimes, and so you as a merchant can choose how you route that transaction. This is true not only in the United States but also in many other markets. For example, in France there's Carte Bancaire, and you can route a transaction to either Carte Bancaire or you can route a transaction to Visa or MasterCard. there's significant differences in terms of approval rates that you see with these transactions. And so it requires that you constantly measure and understand at the finance institution level whether or not you get a lift of when you route transaction through CB versus Visa or MasterCard. And then there's other downstream implications, for example, related to chargebacks and so on. And so you have to really look at everything end to end, consider all the implications, and determine whether or not the thing that you're deploying is actually driven incremental benefit to your business, or whether it's actually damaging your business.
Thanks, Dan. Let's talk a little bit about what it takes to actually implement something like this, right? You guys both probably all have some pretty intensive architecture around what you do and how you have to put something in. Can you describe what it takes in order to get something implemented in your, if somebody in the audience has this great new thing that's going to solve all your problems, what does it take to get that implemented in your organizations?
Well, I can speak for, well, in healthcare, at least with us, it's a very long process, but well worth it. And so there's an extreme vetting process when it comes to any type of product or payment system. First with Treasury, and then cybersecurity, then it falls back to Treasury along with the multiple attorneys. From there, what we'll do is we ensure that the testing piece goes along pretty well, but it's important for us to work with our processors or processor and or processors, because we're not the subject matter expert, nor are the nurses, the physician assistants, those who are actually the boots on the ground that are processing those. So that's why I indicated it does take some time for us. So once testing is complete, what we'll do is we will then have a phased approach. The phased approach does take longer, but considering how large our footprint is and how many people are affected, whether it's training, they have to understand the product, and we do not have the ability to shut down or have a downtime. And so it's really important that we learn from every phase, whether things that work well and things that didn't. And so then we make sure that we make those minor adjustments for the next phase. And typically by the time we get towards the middle or the end of the phases, we're able to roll it out into a much larger population and more effective.
So what do you guys, this is a conference of people who provide you services, right? So what are you looking from them and helping you be better at taking care of customer solutions? What would you like them to do differently than what they're doing with you today?
I can speak, again, in the healthcare space, I have some knowledge in regards to merchant payments, and that's because I was working for Wells Fargo Merchant Services for 12 years prior to joining Dignity Health. But again, as I mentioned, when we're at we have so many different verticals within healthcare. We have pharmacies, the labs, back office billing, cafeterias, Dignity Health International we're launching. Again, there's so many different verticals. And within each vertical, there's multiple partners, whether it's a service provider, a processor, and so forth. So again, we're not the subject matter experts. We don't have the ability, we don't have the knowledge. So even the acronyms that are thrown out at us, what does that mean? And so sometimes just speak to us like we're in third grade. I guarantee you that goes a long ways. But more importantly though, it is the hand-holding of the folks that are our boots on the ground. And so they do get that knowledge, because if they don't understand the product, then it's not going to go anywhere.
I would say too, I think taking the time to make sure you understand what problem your merchant partners are trying to solve for is critical. I can't tell you how many people have come in and said, we've got the best solution for you guys, and it will manage a loyalty program. And kind of foundational to Walmart is everyday low prices, right? Which is that we want to provide our best prices to all of our customers every day, not gimmicky, not loyalty programs. So if you're walking in the door trying to pitch a loyalty program, probably not going to go very far. I'm nodding at John because he's heard a lot of those pitches in the past too. But again, understanding what your merchant partners are trying to solve for is probably the best advice. Don't have a solution that's chasing a problem. Really understand the problem and tailor your solution to fit that. So for us, one of our big goals is making every day easier for busy families, right? How do we make sure that we can help the customer shop when and where they want to shop and be served in the way that she wants to be served, and really making that clean omni-channel experience so that it doesn't feel like they're shopping online and then returning in store, that they're just interacting with Walmart and it's not specific channels, making it smooth and easy. From a payments perspective, we really look at that lens from how do we support the company innovations. A lot of times we're not necessarily driving the projects. Things that are payments projects to us may be part of a larger company initiative, but we're always looking for ways to, I talked about earlier, and it's Walmart, so no surprise, saving cost, making sure it fits within our overall payment strategy. And then for us, highly, highly reliable is critically important as well, right? We've got hundreds of thousands of millions of customers that are standing in our lanes every day, and not interrupting that checkout flow is pretty critical.
At Microsoft, we have the answer really depends on what we're talking about in terms of how difficult it is to implement. So for example, with alternative payments, we work with a number of providers that aggregate these for us. And so it's relatively quick for us to be able to expose a new alternative payment into our ecosystem. Where the slowness kind of comes up is I mentioned that we're the internal processor for all of Microsoft. Sometimes the businesses themselves have to take specific steps to actually make that payment instrument available to them. So many times we'll work with a processor, they'll help us launch a new payment instrument, but then wonder why it's not being adopted broadly and why they're not seeing the volumes. And so a big part of that is because of the complexity of our system. Sometimes for very large implementations, it's something that takes us 12 to 18 months to kind of actually implement end to end. So for example, with 3DS 2.0, we've been looking at that, thinking about that, talking to banks about it, talking to processors, card networks, and everybody for about a year and a half. And as we all know, it's coming up for this fall. And but it's something that we've invested a tremendous amount of effort into doing right out of the gate so that we're doing it right. But we always, so even though we have a very long roadmap, we're always continually reevaluating, like where are we at, how has the business evolved, what's changed, should we readjust? And so our roadmap for the next 6 months is very, very crisp and clean, but our roadmap, the farther out we get, gets a little bit fuzzy. So I'd like to go back and echo one of the comments that was made earlier, Kara made about providers coming in and offering you a solution to a problem that you don't even know that you have yet. So this is probably my biggest pet peeve from providers is they come in and they just throw lots and lots of solutions at us without ever taking the time to really understand our business, what problems we're having. It doesn't really take very much time to kind of go through the effort of experiencing the experience our customers experience and then seeing where there's shortfalls and coming to us and saying, this is what happened when we try to experience your customer experience, and this is where we see opportunities for you to improve it. And so we really respect that, and I'll engage with the provider, even if it's something that we can't really evaluate for 6 to 12 months. These are conversations that we'd like to start having earlier and really understanding them. But that really requires that the provider do some homework and show that they understand the business and what problems that we have and what problems we're trying to solve.
So I think that's a lot of great stuff that you guys have given the audience, and I'm going to try to recap some of it and then ask you guys for any closing comments, right? The first thing I heard is you're looking for solutions that solve customer issues that you see, right? Whether it's solving friction that happens at the checkout, whether it's making a better experience so that they're connected to you more, whether it's creating a new process in which it's unique to your experience. So whether it's solving your reoccurring billing or whether you're solving your healthcare. The other thing I heard that you're looking for out of your partners is for them to come in partnership and not to come and try to come with solutions and say, we've got everything fixed and we've got this great loyalty, but instead come and say, hey, we've noticed this issue or we've experienced this type of thing. Let's talk about how we fix that and how that works in your infrastructure. And probably the last thing I heard from you guys is, hey, and when you do that, make sure you do that with long lead times, because it isn't like tomorrow we're going to be able to flip a switch and turn something like that on. So make sure when you're bringing that to us that we're talking about how that infrastructure works and how do we work it into the lead time. Does that pretty much So you guys got one more crack. We've got a minute left. what else do you want to make sure that this audience knows on how to be a better partner in providing services to you guys?
Dan, you want to start?
No, please go ahead.
Well, one thing that we didn't get to touch on, we talked in, well, I didn't talk in the pre-show panel because I'm a last-minute fill-in, so those of you that were expecting Reed Lieutenant, sorry. But some of the barriers and some of the industry challenges. So we talked a little bit about partners and how people can partner with us, but I think from an industry perspective, when we look at innovation and barriers to innovation, and that create some barriers sometimes for implementation. Some of the things that we run into very specifically from a payments perspective is some of the dated rules around what's card present and what's card not present. And there's cost implications with that, liability implications with that. And when we're moving to a situation where the customer's present or the device is present, how can we better partner to make sure that we're all making better authentication decisions? We should be able to identify the customer and that transaction in a way that approves authorizations, improves conversions, and hopefully reduces cost and fraud in the whole ecosystem. So I think that that's something else that, as an industry, we can partner on. That's not something that merchants can do by themselves. That's not something that partners can do or the acquirers can do by themselves. So really a collaboration between the industry.
I guess the thing that I would throw out there is don't be short-sighted, as a merchant at least, because the rest of you could be short-sighted. The reason that I say that is because I attend a lot of forums such as this one, and I hear comments from merchants all the time, and they really focus a lot on cost of payments, for example. So we should really step back and we take a holistic view of a particular problem that we're trying to solve, and we don't just look at the cost. So we view all the investments that we make in payments as a strategic investment. We're not just kind of continually trying to minimize our operational expense. We're thinking more broadly about what it means in terms of incremental revenue for us, what it means in terms of the customer experience, and then we also do consider, of course, what it means in terms of cost. But we have to look at things holistically so that we know that we're implementing things that intelligently are providing value to our business.
And if I can add one thing, I don't want to keep anyone from happy hour, but I would like to add that from a healthcare perspective, if there's a processor or a service provider that does have a healthcare organization within their portfolio, I would ask that you take the time to proactively go in and ask all the different types of payments that they're taking and in which area. As I mentioned earlier, we have so many different verticals. And because of those verticals, there isn't a one-size shoe that fits all. And some of the processors make that mistake that there is that one-size shoe that fits all for healthcare, and that's not the case. But there are multiple third-party vendors out there that are specific for certain verticals that may eat up that little market share that you're trying to grab. So that's why I asked. It's really important that to sit down with your healthcare partners and really go through each of their individual processing section.
Great. Thanks, guys. Can you guys give them a round of applause? I think they did a great job. So appreciate you and you guys hanging out with us for a half hour to learn how to service your members or your customers better. Thanks.